Welcome to the Made to Thrive show. I've got Ann Wilson, the wealth chef. And I must say, over this time, I've engaged in her material. Her website is incredible. To the listeners out there, they're just freebies. There's products and processes. There's different levels. And I've been personally inspired by you, Ann. And so thank you for your time. And thank you for coming on the show. You're a household name in South Africa, and it sounds like you've got an international following as well. So thank you so much. And for my audience to get to know you, I'm just going to ask you some quick rapid fire questions, and then we'll circle back and then go deeper if we need to. So
Brilliant.
Number one, where were you born and bred?
I am South African through and through. This accent is really confusing because I've lived all over the world, but I was born in Johannesburg, grew up in KZN. So I'm Zulu and Sotho.
The Rainbow Nation coming through.
Fantastic. That's it.
Great. Schooling and tertiary education?
Yeah, so I went to a boarding school in Pietermaritzburg, and then I studied civil engineering at Wits.
Oh, wow.
But we'll come back to that at some point. You know, that was still in my phase when I thought being financially secure meant getting a good job, studying hard. And so, I did engineering not because I really gave a damn about it, because I thought as a woman, getting a good job, doing what men did would be the way. But we can come back to that later.
Cool. We'll come back to that. How many books do you read a week or a month?
I read about 2.5 a week. So let's say 2, and I do a lot of audiobooks. I love audiobooks, so I can listen to them at 1.5 times speed, so then you can get through them even faster. And if I really love a book, then I'll get the physical copy so I can then make lots of notes. But I think reading is such an amazing, cheap way for us to get extraordinary info, insight. So love it.
Cool. Your most gifted book that you've given?
Oh, wow. Well, I'd have to say The Wealth Chef book as a start, because that is gifted a hang of a lot when we first launched it. We get over 10,000 copies were distributed worldwide, gifting, which was amazing. The Richest Man in Babylon, from a really anchoring into just the fundamentals of relationship with wealth and money. And recently, one that I've loved and I've gifted quite a lot is Atomic Habits. Okay. Really getting clear on the micro behaviors and how do we design our wealthy life through intentionality of our behaviors.
Brilliant. What would you say one of your superpowers is?
I attract amazing people into my life. I have no idea how, but just like you, I really do. And I was laughing the other day, somebody said to me, well, Anne, you just think everybody's amazing. And maybe that's true, but and so I think that is a superpower, that I'm able to find delight in people and delight in life with relative ease. And that certainly adds to just the overall quality and experience of life.
Cool. Let's pivot into your story. I've been inspired by it. You were in debt. You were working a job. It sounds like you weren't that happy, but maybe you can just expand on that in terms of what happened and what brought you to the crisis that has caused this an amazing person to arise in this financial area in South Africa and the world.
Oh, I think growing up in South Africa in a very average family, very much the story of work hard, get a good job, don't really talk about money. Money doesn't grow on trees. So there was a lot of disconnection with money. You didn't talk about it, but if you did, it was generally either in a shaming or uncomfortable or disconnected way. But there was also the thread that it was important that, watched the dad earned the money. I'm 5 of 6 kids, so mom looked after the kids. That kind of relationship as well, in terms of where was the relationship with money. And then my father died relatively young, and I got to watch my mum now having to manage the money stuff day to day and look after her financial future, not know who she could trust. There was a small amount of money. What did she do with it? And this devastating financial illiteracy, which is just pervasive. And so that was at the point that I really went, wow, I never want to be that vulnerable financially. But the only story I'd been told was then, go and get a good job, work hard. So hence studied civil engineering. And very quickly I thought, okay, I've got this money stuff sorted. I got my first job that felt sexy, but then I was being offered bank loan, this, credit cards, overdraft. And I honestly thought that was just the way what life was meant to be. That was the path. Almost that was success. and very quickly slipped into a devastating debt hole. Because again, we're not taught this stuff. We're not taught how to manage it, our relationship with it. It's this taboo subject. And so I found myself in this big debt hole and went, okay, this is anything but freedom. This is anything but feeling safe and confident about money. And so there was the first step where I realized I needed to choose me. I needed to choose freedom as a conscious thing if I truly wanted to live a full life. And that I also needed to be prepared to do stuff differently from other people and really go radical for a short period of time in order to do things differently. And I think when we come to debt and some of these investing, sometimes it can feel really hard, those initial steps, and it can feel like deprivation, but being able to focus on the freedom really helped us. So I climbed out of that debt hole, and then I got married and thought, okay, now I've got this money stuff sorted. Spend as little as I could, save, and someday in the future, I would be able to live the life I want. So I had just swung from this almost binging on money I didn't have, almost to this deprivation and how little. Because again, I'd never been taught how to work out, well, what is enough? I had no concept of the difference between saving and investing. So there was just this hoarding stuff, which also brought with it huge fear and anxiety. And realized, hang on, this still isn't working. And so it was really a stage where everything was about deprivation, what we couldn't do. And it really had an impact on my relationship. We had no idea how to have empowered money conversations. We had very different money behaviors. And so it all blew up in a big, messy money drama. And the marriage and the money I'd been holding on to walked out the door. And there I was so now I was in my early 30s. I'd been working hard, thought I'd been doing the right thing, and went, okay. This isn't obviously working. And although I'm blonde and a woman, I let down the shame bullshit and said, okay, maybe there's not because I'm just stupid or a woman or whatever story we can say, that I'm bad at this stuff. I realized there was a gap. I had been taught to earn. And there's a huge machine that teaches us how to spend and tells us what we should be spending our money on to be worthy. But there was this huge gap in between. I'd never actually been taught how to give my money leadership, what to do with it. And this extraordinary thing called investing. And so that really led to a curiosity. And books, one of the first books I picked up was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And suddenly realized there was these things called assets. I'd never been exposed to those. Investing, there was the sort of old white male boys club kind of thing, the stock market, that felt scary. But I really realized, hang on, there's an and here. I wasn't prepared to either sacrifice my freedom and my life and live that, but also I wasn't prepared to live in financial anxiety and just, ignorance and forget about that. So I really sought this end. How did I create this financial security first and then freedom and live a great life? And that's what started this journey. I first invested in the stock market, then I got involved in investment property, then low input businesses, so slowly building up these different asset classes while still a salaried employee. And I think this was really key. And I mentioned that because a lot of people get cooked into believing they either need to invent something or sell this crazy business. There's this one thing that's going to be their ka-ching event that's going to sort out their money stuff. And it's not. It's this consistency of the behaviors and what we do, building up these multiple little things. And so from that very sort of low, dark, I can remember the Tuesday when it all ended up in Hong Kong, it was 8 years. Then I suddenly went, holy moly, I've done it. I've got the net worth. Because now I knew how to calculate what's enough. I knew what assets were. And there was actually this plan. It wasn't just a wish and a hope. And I got to the point like, I'll try not to swear, but it was like, wow, I've created this freedom. And this freedom, so when I talk about financial freedom, is I have now got enough assets that can pay for my chosen lifestyle, that I can have the freedom to do what I want, when I want, where I want. And so this extraordinary liberation was like, wow. So, it was first for myself, absolutely. And I think we all have to do it first for ourselves. Because if we haven't done that, there's no use to anybody else. Absolutely. And then this passion to share it with others evolved, and this extraordinary freedom to now have that choice. And that led to the creation of the Wealth Chef. And that has just been the most magical journey of creating extraordinary business, but also freedom and getting to help now thousands of people all over the world create the same for themselves.
Well done. If I can sort of just distill it, is it more really that your purpose was driving you, your purpose to just allow people to be free. It seems that this trapped feeling that you had, this hole that you were in, for want of better words, you wanted to be free yourself, and you knew what that felt like, and now you want to bring that freedom to the world. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You've absolutely hit it on the head. And I'll often refer to myself as a financial activist, almost a liberation side. And I do see the enslavement around money, socially, culturally. In South Africa, we have a legacy and a history and some really funky relationships with abundance and scarcity and haves and have-nots and inequity. And so that individual prison that we can end up being in from our socialization, from our relationship with money, from illiteracy, is devastating. And I think until we can liberate ourselves and empower ourselves around this money stuff, men, women, doesn't matter what age, we cannot truly get to experience life fully. So it is this absolute freedom driver of liberation, of wanting to help people get into right relationship and realize what do we need to do so money is something that serves and doesn't enslave.
Excellent. That's a lot of value there. I do want to ask you, I've got two kids, a 16-year-old and a 4-year-old, and my 16-year-old's got a narrative with regards to finances, but now, just speaking to you, what should I say to my 4-year-old? How do I have storybooks and build a narrative in her mind that she can really believe, so that she can start actioning that as she grows older? What can I tell her? I mean, 2-3 tips to a 6-year-old. What do you say to them?
Yeah, so I think people underestimate how soon they can start having empowered conversations with kids about money. Literally from 3, kids are able to start comprehending a relationship of a value exchange. So understanding that there is this value exchange. So for your little E, from 4, get them to start being able to have some choices. So if it's a small amount of money, choice between separating something to save, they can start learning how to defer actions. That's my cat shouting in the background. She's going, hell yeah, let's have that conversation with kids. It's harder to have that conversation with fur kids. But also starting to have independence of choice around what to use that with. So for 4 to 6, it's really just maybe learning some delayed gratification is vitally important. The benefit of holding back and putting smaller side. From 7, they can actually start almost dividing money up into 3 parts. Something to make their choices on, some spending, something to save, that this deferred gratification, but also a giving. Because one of the most important skills for all of us to learn around this whole relationship with money is that there's enough. What is this element of enough? Because so much of our money stuff is driven by fear and greed, bombarded to us. When we can know that there's always a little bit spare that we can give and contribute, it creates an extraordinary relationship in our brain around our own sense of well-being. And also, in addition to that, while they learn, every single South African kid, parents should open a tax-free investment account from the kids from the moment they're born, where you can get this benefit of tax-free investing, not a tax-free savings account. Unfortunately, most people misunderstand this. Actually get it invested in juicy index trackers. And then from when they're about 7, 8, they can actually start seeing that money is there, what it means, having those kind of conversations.
Okay, fantastic. In this crazy corona world now, even my 16-year-old, the story that he's probably heard, we've had conversations about income that's, and we've been affected by it, in my different income revenue streams. He's got a story and narrative that we got to save, and we're cutting here and we're cutting there. And, I think it's started affecting his mental well-being. How in this time, this crazy time where, people's income has been dramatically, or let me say most people's income has dramatically been reduced. How do we teach them a different narrative? How do we create something in this world where there's just so much negativity?
I think there's an extraordinary, exquisite, but almost excruciatingly beautiful opportunity that's happening right now, is for us to drop into what I believe is the most important lesson that we all need to get. And I'm feeling quite emotional about this as we really sort of drop, because I think there's this exquisite opportunity, but it can be a really tough one, is to truly start understanding that our worthiness, who we are, our enoughness, our relationship with life, our sense of success, significance, just our worthiness of breath, of being able to be loved, has got nothing to do with what we earn, has got nothing to do with the value of our portfolio. And so this is such a huge indoctrination shift, because our entire education system, entire society tells us a different story. Kids are asked young, what do you want to be when you're big? And that question isn't loaded with joy and wonder and how do you want to express your life force? It's implied, how are you going to sell your time and your energy in exchange for money as something that's going to define you? And so this is such a ongoing thing that we all have to drop into. I'm not defined by what I earn, that states that and so then when we are able to do that, we're actually able to get into a cleaner relationship with money, because then money is no longer burdened with having to drag our baggage around and our insecurities, and it can just do what it's meant to do, which is to serve, to support, create security, and grow and invest. So the very first step is really starting to work on our self-worth as a completely separate element. And I think there's an extraordinary opportunity for conversations, not about deprivation, or we're having to cut back, or we're having to scrimp or save, which could be a narrative, but there's also this narrative about the freedom of choice, the difference between needs versus wants, and really getting clear on those and understanding that, are we making amazing choices? And so I often prefer to use the word, we've got such an opportunity to learn how to be wealthy spenders. Not unconscious spenders. This is not about deprivation. It's going through, so everybody, go and look at your bank statements, go and look at your transactions, see where your money has been going. And most people are astounded when they get conscious to realize how much of that spend was completely unconscious, was triggered by some kind of emotional spend trigger, or some kind of story that's just what you meant to have, whether it's that TV subscription, or whether it's that insurance, or what. Is it actually serving you? Does it bring you joy? Does it light you up? And when we can claim back our power and go, we get to choose that. And that liberation of going, if right now we're choosing consciously from a place of empowerment to lighten the load, this is freedom. This is liberation, because it's not defining us. Now, for some people, it's really, really tight and tough in that. So we can also get into, what are some of the decisions that they should be making. But I think the first thing is when we separate, our worthiness isn't defined by what we have, and to know that the choices we make with our spending is our choice. And when we take that, it's a completely different narrative evolves.
That's fantastic, Anne. I mean, I just think of just raising the next generation on that, and it reminds me of Made to Thrive's pillars. The two most important pillars are purpose and community. Discovering our purpose. Start with why. The Simon Sinek of, can you take your why? Can you take your purpose? Can you serve others, your community, your close community, with why you've been created? And maybe the question we should be asking children is not what you're going to be when you're older, but why are you going to do what you're going to do? And it sounds like yours is just to inspire this freedom and to break enslavement to these financial, sort of narratives and stories of what success is, the fast car, the big house, the holidays, the clothing, the image, the perfume you wear, how you look, what your face
and
looks
even
like.
What your school, your kids should go to, all of these stuff. And I love beautiful things. I love experiences, I love travel, but never at the cost of ourselves. And I think this is this fine line, as you so beautifully said, where is this aspect of, I think for us to have the greatest contribution to the world, to our community, to our families, is we first have to truly dive in and go, am I choosing to express that purpose? Am I choosing to do these things, including how we spend? For me, there's three resources we are given. There is our time, there is our energy, and then there is money. And these three together create our lives. And if we can bring great consciousness with it and go, okay, am I choosing to spend my time, my energy, and my money as an expression of who I am, my creativity, my intrinsic worthiness that's already in there, as a wanting to experience and explore life and add to it? Or am I trying to validate who I am externally? And the one will lead to heaven, and the other one to devastating hell. And exactly what you said, those pillars. So that purpose, that expression of intrinsic worthiness.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we can move on to the fact of, just this emotional, buying and spending that's been happening in a very capitalistic world. It's got a grip of a lot of people, just the advertisements that are out there and how people are viewed when they're significant and when they're successful. How do we break that? I mean, are you teaching kids? Are you in primary schools? Do you have programs for teenagers? How are you, reaching the next generation?
This whole conscious consumption is such an amazing opportunity for us to really understand that how we choose in terms of our leadership to use those resources, and especially our money. This is how to be a wealthy spender is also not just for ourselves, but it's the implications, the ripple impact of that. And I think there's this extraordinary opportunity that can come forward, but it also is, if you're choosing to go into debt, the relationship with consumption. So I think the very first step is deep compassion for ourselves, for all of us to realize there's a massive, massive machine that uses a lot of behavioral economic psychology to trigger fear and greed, missing out, not being good enough, these sides. So this first journey is really, so I say self-compassion, because I've been exploring this journey now for over 20 years. I've been financially free now for 14 years. And in riding these waves, and I will still get triggered by these big machines. But I think the sooner we're able to create that awareness and go, oh, fascinating. So there's the compassion, there's the awareness and a willingness to go, hang on, is this my truth? Isn't it? And then as far as teaching the next generation, I'm very passionate about first teaching parents and adults, because so many people come to my seminars around the world or speaking and say, and I'll say to people, why do you want this? Why do you want to master your money stuff? And so many people say to me, Anne, because I never want my kids to have to suffer. I want to do it for my kids. I want them to never have to worry about finances. And I go, that's fantastic. And the only way you do that is by first being the change yourself.
Profound.
If you don't create your own freedom, you cannot give that to your kids. And I think so many people want to, the way we impact the next generation is by demonstration. And if people we don't individually sort out our own money stuff, our relationship with it, our practical how-tos, clean up our house. If we're coming from this martyrdom story or sacrifice, and especially as women, there's a lot of bullshit, sacrifice and martyrdom, and that's what it means to be a good mother, a good wife, a good daughter, or this, coming last. That kind of story has to change, because we're in a situation where we have got, women own less than 1% of the assets in this world. Devastating around this world. And no wonder we've got a really broken relationship with also the ability for women to bring their gifts fully to the world, because if you're not financially empowered, you're going to not be able to bring all of yourself to this world. So I think the best way we show the next generation is cleaning up our own stuff first.
That's fantastic.
And then, that's how we do it.
Well, I mean, that's a scary statistic in terms of women. And I think it's probably a narrative that men have put over women for generations, and they've believed that. And I think, maybe recently they're saying, no, actually not. I'm going to be empowered to live out my purpose, my why, what brings me meaning and fulfillment. And I'm going to do that through my very close communities and the rest of the world. And they're starting to believe a different narrative and story. And so well done to you. And I hope that the women of South Africa and the women of the world arise with how they carry the very essence of who they are is going to result. I think the byproduct will be money. The byproduct will be, amazing businesses with huge revenues, as long as they can tap into the very essence and not sort of go against culture for the sake of going against culture.
This is it, because I think it's also, but, we could say, oh, men have imposed that. No, I think it's been a devastating story narrative, as you say, for the last 2,000-3,000 years of disempowerment from both sides, because it's the reason why money and financial conflict is cited as the number one relationship breakdown issue. And many people are experiencing extreme times now in relationship, compounded by not being able to get out, wondering by this. And again, in relationship, how to learning how to have empowered money conversations. Also breaking the story that men, that their primary value and worthiness is by their ability to provide. There's also this assumption that somehow men are just meant to know money management and investing, which is devastating. So many of my male clients say to me, Anne, there's so little opportunity for me in my community to have clean, honest money conversations with men, with my male friends. It's bravado or BS. And I think the more we can drop the shaming, the judgment, this narrative about what success is, and just have clean conversations around money, what's going on, everybody gets liberated.
Yeah, fantastic. I've been watching quite a few of your videos, and I don't like rules, but I've realized over time that actually rules give banks. They're like a river, you know, and so if you've got banks, they actually give us more freedom than anything else. So, you know, just give us some, you know, your top 3 or 4, or maybe even 5. I know you got a video on 10 of the most important rules, but we don't have time to go through all of them. But how important are rules, and why do some people stick to rules and not, Anne?
Yeah. So I'm a freedom freak, and I hate rules. But I realized very early on that absolutely frameworks create freedom. And so I use the concept of framework, just as you say, the riverbanks. If there's not a riverbank, your river is just a big fat puddle going nowhere. And they also help us from a mental and neuroscience aspect automate processes and get us there faster. So when we have a framework or a set of principles that we can operate within, it really helps us automate the things that are great for us, where they become absolute. And the most important number 1 rule, which is pivotal in my life and has to be everybody's, is what I call you've got to pay your freedom tax first. And this is this concept of paying yourself first, which is hugely misunderstood. So a lot of business owners think that means paying themselves a salary, which is very important. If you've got a business and you're not paying yourself, that's a funky thing going on there. But it's about allowing some of your money to stay in your life. Again, this deep, devastating pattern that we're taught, what I call the break even, or worse, borrow more and spend that too. It's as though the name of the game is how quickly we can get rid of the money that we earn. And so the first rule needs to be a chunk of money, that every single bit of money that comes into your life, a slice of that gets put into your asset drawer. It gets paid towards your freedom, and it gets converted into assets. Because here's the bottom line. No matter what you earn, no matter what you save, if you do not have assets working for you, you can never, ever, 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 ever be free. Because the aim of the wealth game and the finance game is to have these things that can work separately from us, that can grow in value and earn income and value that we can then feed off. It's like planting this beautiful orchard. So if we aren't keeping some of that money and literally planting it and converting it to assets, we're never going to get there. And this is such an important rule, because it also, so many people say, well, and I'll see what's left at the end of the month. Then I'll save that, or then I'll do that, or I'm going to wait until my business is doing X, Y. And there's this complete delay and deferral of freedom. And it's a habit. Our habits create our life. Our habits create our wealth, not money. And so that is that very first habit. And then trusting. But then people say, but Anne, what if I can't pay my bills? Until you make your freedom the most important thing, it will never be there. And there's this extraordinary thing we have between our head, brains, creativity, resilience, that when we make that a must, we will find a way to cover those other things. And that's the biggest shift. Second one is, just also avoiding consumer debt like the plague. It is a parasite. It is devastating. And again, it's become so normalized. So no consumer debt. Get yourself out of that consumer debt and just make it an absolute rule. And the third one is also learning how to save, which goes hand in hand with, so investing, your freedom is converting that money into assets. Saving is keeping some money in your life for the to be expected, unexpected events. Right now, there are a lot of people devastated because they didn't have an emergency fund in place. They had no safety net. And this isn't a great way to live.
Yeah, fantastic and well summarized. You know, I've always said people don't do what they value. they do what they most value. And so
So well put.
it's so important, because if you don't value your freedom, you are not going to put the habits in place to ensure that happens. So you're not going to put into that asset class. If you don't value that you want to stay out of debt, you're not going to do that. And then if you don't value saving and having an emergency fund, you're not going to do it. So to instill these principles or rules in place, I do want to ask you, why do some people maintain these sustained transforming habits and others not? There are many people for a few years they do it, and then they just sort of, I don't know if it's emotional or stress or self-worth, but they don't maintain habits. It's the same as exercise or food. People have, transformative times for like 3 months, 6 months, and then a year later, they're in the same mess again. What are your thoughts on that?
We could have a whole day's conversation, just the neuroscience and the behavioral economics, and I'm fascinated by the workings of our internal side. And we, as you said, we can also have one set of really empowered relation in one area of our life, and maybe in others not so great. But I think, firstly, when it came to the money stuff, I realized I needed to protect my money from me. And so it came absolutely strongly. As you say, you've got to start with the why. And a lot of people say, oh, Anne, teach me an investing strategy. I'll go, hang on. We first got to get really clear. What the bleep do you really want? Slow down. Listen. Get clear on that. Understand you've got this one exquisite, amazing, extraordinary life. Are you going to be living it, dancing to a whole lot of other people's stories about what that is? Or are you going to have the courage to drop down and go, what do I really want? And it's a terrifying question for many people, because they've just been told what they should want everywhere. So slowing down, there's nothing better than a time like this to go, wow, if you're not just giving yourself space to go, what actually do I want? What is important? Because if you don't know that, then any path will do. Then you are just going to be drifting around, being reactive to that advert, to that person's opinion, to that magazine cover or whatever it is. So this deep anchoring and make it practice. For me, it's a lifetime practice of going, what do I really want? Listening to it. Is it my truth or is it external? What the hell do you want? And then get really clear on what is the cost of not living that. Because I think we also have to understand that often we are, as humans, we're both towards and away motivated. And often in the personal development or a lot of the positive thinking, we just want to focus on the unicorns farting flowers and it's all wonderful, which is great. I'm very much about focusing where you're going to, but I think we also have to get really deeply serious that if I continue on this path, what is the consequence? If I don't sort out this debt issue that I'm in, or how the spending is going, if I'm constantly being reactive, I don't want to see what's going on with where my money is going. If I'm not investing, what's the consequence in a year? What's the consequence in 5 years? What's the consequence in 10 years? Let's get really serious and know that, again, for men and women, 2 out of 3 South Africans will at some point in their life have to rely on either their kids, their siblings, or the charity of strangers just to survive, let alone thrive. Because this stuff isn't sorted out and got clean. So it's about aspirational. It is about living that life. It is about giving. But it's also about going, that's not living. So when we can really drop into the towards and the away from and go, okay, there's a deep necessity, and then using rules, using automation. So we're not having to make a conscious decision. So put in place an automated investment plan. So you're not having to every month or every week remake that decision. Because actually as humans, we love to think we're logical things. We're not. We're just gigantic sacks of emotion swirling around. And many times those don't serve us. So use systems and processes to save us from ourselves.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done and well summarized, and value to the listeners. I do want to talk about and pivot to the difference between a financial mentor. If you've got a financial mentor, do you have a financial coach? Have you been coached from a financial point of view? And financial advisors. Sometimes, I've got a financial advisor, but I feel that there could be other motives. I'm not sure, can I trust this person? You hear so many stories of the financial advisors taking advantage of people. Do you have a mentor? Do you have a coach? And what do you think about those three relationships?
So the whole mentoring and coaching relationship in every area of my life is vital. I started my own personal journey, heard some of my money story, but they also got to a point in my life where I was sorting out the money stuff, but the deep relationship with myself, with life, really that internal journey of worthiness, of wealth, what it is, this curiosity. And so Tony Robbins was one of my very first coaches. I had a lot of work with Tony. I ended up working with Tony as one of his senior leaders. And so the entire relationship of coaching, mentoring is vital. And now for every area of my life that I want to make a shift in, I always get a mentor and a coach.
Wow.
So, and it just depends on what is that specific thing I'm looking at. Right now, I've got a coach on stand-up comedy because it scares the hell out of me. So I find something and I'm like, oh my God. And I have in my business.
Wow,
I know, terrifying.
But that's fascinating. That's so
well,
cool.
I always, I try every year to go, what's something that scares the hell out of me?
Wow.
And stretch it. So COVID actually got me out of having to do a stand-up in New York in June. So I got to be able to hide, but it's going to come along.
Yeah, it will.
But so, finding that area. So earlier on in my money journey, books were great coaches to me. And I found great teachers through that. I used audio programs and also just by doing. And then in different sectors, so I'll go on trainings in all of these different sides, specifically if it was investment property, if I was looking at commercial property, get that training, get that coach on that side. So now I have more peers that and on my wealth aspect where I connect with, we share what we're doing. And so that's also vital. Look, who is your community? Who you're having conversations with? But there's coaching and mentoring on the other side. Now, when it comes to financial advisors and the financial industry, so I can get a little bit rabid on this. And I truly think that the financial industry has devastated and abused the average person in the street as an industry as a whole for the last 40 years. Really, as the advent of funds came after the Second World War and the whole concept of pensions for individuals evolved. And this entire industry, where in the 70s was tiny, is now one of the biggest consumers of value. They don't create much value. And this is why I love index trackers. I love passive investing, because basically it's an industry that has grown big, fat, and greedy by taking fees of people not understanding the implication of that 1%, that 2% over time. And it really has a huge differential. If you're paying 1% to a financial advisor in your investments, on your pensions, whatever they are, your discretionary investments, and then you've also got actively managed funds with 1.5% to up to 3% fees, that cumulative impact versus if you just put together a straightforward portfolio of index trackers, you will end up after 20 years with a 70% differential.
Wow.
70% goes to the finance industry and you get left with that paltry 30%. I mean, it's devastating.
That's crazy.
It is. And most people that are called financial advisors, they're not. They're salespeople of financial products. And very few of them actually understand wealth management, how to put a proper money plan in place, and the whole ecosystem. Because our wealth isn't just that. It's a whole ecosystem of how do we manage our money, how are we living in relationship with it, what our investments are in place, and things like our wills, our insurances, what are the roles that they play. And so it's an industry that for me has relied on people's ignorance and relies on fear. It relies on the narrative that this is complicated and difficult. So you know what? Don't you risk it because you're going to get it wrong. And then it's going to be all your fault when you're living under that bridge. So trust me and I'll look after you. So it's also very paternalistic kind of energy. So as a user financial advisor, but get savvy, rather pay fees, don't then a ongoing percentage, get advice if you need to, and then it's not that difficult.
All need a financial coach, Anne, because then, the financial advisor's got his own interests at heart. He has to. That's his business.
Absolutely.
So now we need an external who's not going to be affected by which product you go for, what investment you make. You
Yeah.
go there with the meeting with the financial coach, who's totally independent, who's got nothing to gain other than his consulting fee, and then can ask the relevant questions and make the relevant suggestions without being incentivized in any way. Is there a place for the financial coach? And are there financial coaches that would do this?
I truly believe that it's not as difficult as we're led to believe. And this is what the Wealth Chef book is all about, trying to teach people. These what I call the recipes. As you say, on my website, I try and teach people about index tracking and investing, what it's about. I think there are financial coaches out there, but I think for me, it's about behavioral and habits and putting those in place. I truly don't believe anybody needs a financial advisor. Okay. I think that's an obsolete, an absolute obsolete profession. Sure. That the advent of automate investing, I mean, what we can now do on our phones with bot investing, the things that we can learn, the whole role of this loaded funds, as they're called, where there's these heavy fees on them, the actively managed funds, the financial advisor telling you to don't worry your pretty head. It's archaic. It's a bit like you used to go into a travel agent and book your flights because you weren't able to do it. The internet has created unprecedented opportunity for democratization. And it's also created opportunity for us to access great quality investments at low cost, because this is the thing. We can only control three things as private investors. We can control our contributions. This is why it's so important, this consistent contribution towards our freedom. And that's in our control. We can control so our contributions. Then the consistency is vital in life. There's a guy, Jim Slater, who's one of an investing strategy called Zulu Principle. He always says a mediocre strategy consistently applied will always outperform a brilliant strategy inconsistently applied. That's whether it's with your health, with your relationship. If you're all over the place and you leap from one bright, shiny object to the other. So about just consistency. Find a simple pattern, a recipe, and just be consistent with its application. Money loves consistency. Assets, just provided a healthy framework so it can get on, do itself. That's right. But then the third thing is we can control our costs. And costs are the biggest impact on asset performance that there is. And so this is the difference, when we can be really savvy about how are we ensuring that the majority of our money is actually working for us and not a slice is taken off. That is what we can control. And so now the internet, you've got syndicated property investing that is, again, bringing commercial global property opportunities. You've got peer-to-peer lending class, which is doing this. So there's this amazing opportunity to get wholesale deals now because of the democratization of being created by the internet. Whereas before, there really was the insider club that only had access to that. And the rest of us had to go and get these horrible retail products sold by this financial industry with these big fees all over them.
Sure. Well, that's a lot of light being shed there, because I do think sometimes you go into these meetings with financial advisors and you feel that you're not as educated and you don't have the experience that they do, and you doubt yourself. And so, I think maybe... And
a lot of jargon is used.
Then sort of barrier to entry on the administration and how the funds are invested. So I think it probably is opening up because of the very reasons that you've mentioned, but maybe... there is going to be a place to take an independent person to be...
Absolutely. And that's why I was saying, if you're going to... Absolutely. And that's why I always say, rather than get someone who you pay a fee, as in you pay for that advice, rather than these trailing commissions, which are devastating.
Yeah. Good. The last topic that I want to talk about, and then we're going to end. And so grateful for your time, your insights, a lot of energy and zeal. It's fantastic and it's beautiful. But tell us about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and the way of the future. How do you see that?
Yes, I always teach everyone to invest like an Egyptian. So I don't know if this is a podcast that people can't see. I'm doing a big pyramid over my head. Yeah. But it's really important that, again, we understand there's no one asset class, there's no one investment that's going to be this ka-ching thing. And we've got to get out of this lottery kind of mentality of looking for this thing that's going to rescue us. So investing like an Egyptian is building up different asset classes, forming the different sides of the pyramid, but the base of the pyramid is solid. What I say, boring, consistent investments. Let boring be is beautiful. This is that consistency. That's these rules.
Yeah.
And this is this regular investing in solid asset classes of property, index trackers and equity, looking at low input businesses. But as you go up, there's opportunity for more speculative investments. And I'm very bullish and very excited about what's happening in the blockchain with cryptocurrencies, altcoins, from both a philosophical aspect of transparency and cleanness around money. I think we are going to still see huge shifts going on with what's happening with money being pumped into the markets, the devaluation of currencies, which are called the fiat currencies in dollar, pound, euro, rand, and the emergence of cryptos. But it's super important to understand it's very, very early days, just like when the internet was first starting. So if anybody sits there saying, this is the altcoin that's going to go through the roof, then run a mile, because no one knows. Back then in the .com era, the Googles and the Amazons didn't even exist. They came about later. Your Netscapes that people invest in no longer exist. So I said, absolutely, add some speculation, put some cryptos into your portfolio, but at the really top of the pyramid stuff. So it's a small percentage. And if one of the challenges I saw a lot of people, especially about 2 years ago when there was really heat in the crypto market, people doing stupid things, taking debt to mortgage against their property, to crypto was now going to make them the next crypto billionaire. That, if you're coming from that energy, go for a good long run, because that is, if your investing is making you excited and revved up, that's a good indication you're going to make a stupid decision. But I am very bullish on that. So I love the concept of it. I invest in it. I think Bitcoin is a very good chaos hedge, and just to have an alternative asset class in as well, together with gold. So gold isn't an asset that's going to grow in value for you. It doesn't earn money, but it's a wealth preserver. And I think Bitcoin is also another alternative, uncorrelated asset class that you can go into. And then if you're interested in looking at blockchain and altcoins, invest in small, consistent amounts in between 15 or 20 different altcoins, so that you spread this risk, because most of them will go to zero, but you may have one that really performs. So you want to look at it from a portfolio basis. So it's a bit like you're planting a field of carrots, knowing that a whole lot of them might be eaten by the rabbits, some will go rotten, and a few might come out. But only if you've got the base of your investments in place.
I like the Egyptian. Boring is beautiful. And then at the top, brilliant. Wow. Thank you so much. And Ann Wilson, the Wealth Chef, has given us so much value, so much time, so much energy. And where can people find you, Ann? And where can they connect with you? And how can they just receive all this amazing info that you've got for them?
Well, we've got a wealth of articles and videos over at thewealthchef.com. So that's chef as in CHEF, cooking up your money stuff. There's a great YouTube channel under The Wealth Chef. Connect with me on Instagram or Facebook, all under The Wealth Chef. So Ann Wilson, The Wealth Chef, find me there. And as you said, a lot of great resources, free trainings, and they can get a copy of The Wealth Chef. And now that in South Africa, I'll also give you a free training with The Wealth Chef, a 30-day money makeover. So if you buy the book, we can ship that and courier that to you. So you can find that also on the website. But that is just, allow yourself to take baby steps. No one popped out the womb of financial genius, or even understanding a relationship with money. It's completely a learned skill. And just small amounts consistently done, we suddenly emerge and go, oh, wow, that thing that felt scary or jargon or confusing, we emerge and go, oh, okay, now I understand this more. And that's how we do it.
Fantastic. Well, I feel inspired. I feel empowered by Ann Wilson. She's living her purpose and her why, inspiring and empowering people to just be free, financially free, it reminds me, honestly, about Nelson Mandela, who lived his life and lived a life of service to set people free and inspire and empower people to live a life of freedom. And so Anne's doing this in the financial arena. We're grateful for her in South Africa. So I wish you all the best, Anne. Pour favor and blessing upon you, that you would rise up as you serve both I've just had testimony of people that they might not be the greatest earners, but they've been empowered by you to make small steps, as you've just said. So you've served the low, if for want of a better word, and the very, very high corporates. And so, yeah, be blessed, and
thank you so much. And back at you. I'm just so grateful for the platform that you're creating, that together, all of us, and really, I think owning that there's extraordinary opportunity of community and upwelling where we can, I think, create a whole new future in our relationship with how we consume money, our worthiness and identity, which I think can create such an amazing opportunity for this extraordinary country that we're blessed to be part of.
Great, Anne. I know we're going to connect again in the future. So thank you so much for your time.